Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank Podcast, the show where members of Team MagicJank get together and we chat about the latest happenings in Magic, oftentimes discussing what's going on in Standard as well as whatever is striking our current fancy. If there are any big news topics and whatnot, we'll touch on those as well. And right now, it's been a minute since we talked Standard, so we're going to do exactly that. My name's Graham. I go by Hamhawks42 on the internet, and I'm joined by the one and only Astralsflame. How are we doing, man?
Doing good, buddy. Doing good. You know, it's Wednesday afternoon, hanging out in the tundras with the Teamer clan as we do, and doing what Teamer does best. We're playing lands, we're rocking creatures, and we're ready to talk on the Standard meta. How about you, bud?
Heck yeah, man. No, I'm doing well. It's funny. Over the last couple of weeks, I have really accepted the notion that I have a type of deck, and I'm just going to stick to it, you know? I love being well-rounded and experimenting and trying new things, but right now, graveyard-centric strategies are in a surprisingly good place. Mostly because people don't realize they're in a good place, and so, the hate's not quite out there to get them just yet. And so I've been having a lot of fun playing various Golgari action on the ladder, and I'm living my best Insidious Roots lifestyle, and it's great. I love it. And yeah, wouldn't trade it for the world. Also, everybody play your Haywire Mites. They're great. Yeah. Haywire Mites and Clones, just play them. They're fantastic. Yeah. So anyway, I've been having a great time with that. So yeah, still climbing the ladder and just hanging out. Also, reanimation is viable, believe it or not. Like, I think a lot of people would tell you it's not right now. But it is. I also say that like every week. So I'm gonna spare you guys that. If you're interested in more, come by my stream or my YouTube videos. I will be playing it, I promise. So, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know what I like, and I'm going to do it. Speaking of, so what have you been playing? I have a feeling there's some spicy tech that you've been jamming on that I definitely want you to share with the listeners at home. Well, so what are you up to these days?
Yeah, I've been playing a few things. I've done a little bit of the meta play. You know, we all know the love of Cori-Steel Cutter, the most broken thing to come out of Dragonstorm.
Yep.
I have been playing a little bit of that just to get out of the drudges of plat, to get up to some diamond. But, I did my grind and I'm re-experimenting with some new decks. And I thought to myself 2 nights ago, wouldn't it be fun if I could cheat in something that has protection from everything? What is the biggest, dumbest way I can do this?
But what? Something has protection from everything? How ridiculous would that be if a card had protection from everything?
It'd be so broken. Oh, it would have to be an avatar, right?
It would be an avatar, and of course, I would imagine for some reason that it would be a Hydra. Yeah, we're being a little coy and a little silly. Progenitus is legal and standard for some reason. They decided to put it in Foundations, and here we are.
Here we are, and that's exactly what my opponents did.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with Progenitus, it is a 10/10 for double Wooburg. So its total mana investment is 10. And all of them are specific color pips. But it's a 10/10 with protection from everything. And if it would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, you reveal it, then shuffle it into its owner's library instead. So that little intervening if clause is the reason that you haven't heard me talk about it, because I can't reanimate it. Therefore, I'm out. But if you're ramping into it, it costs 10, but there are plenty of ways to fix mana nowadays, so that's not crazy. But you've got another means that you're using to get this sucker onto the battlefield relatively quickly and relatively consistently. You're using Smuggler's Surprise, right?
Yep, that is correct. Because, what wouldn't be a nice way to cheat in a big creature without a lovable card all the way back from Outlaws of Thunder Junction? Hand that 1 green and a little spree to put 2 creatures from my hand onto the battlefield. And honestly, I was surprised. Currently, the list is about a 69% win rate over 15 games. So nice. It's holding. And I'm kind of shocked, but I will say, despite the shockness, there is just something about cheating in Progenitus and seeing your opponent read the card and scooping in the game because they don't run board clears.
Yeah, because that's the thing. So protection is one of those kind of interesting effects where it has a lot of pros and cons. It's actually a very self-balancing mechanic, which I really appreciate. So having protection from everything means it cannot be targeted by anything. That's positive or negative. So you couldn't equip this. You can't aura. You can't boggle it. But your opponents also can't use skill spells on it, which is nice. It also can't take damage from anything. So even sweepers like Blasphemous Act that don't target but deal damage, well, tough luck. That's not going to deal with this. Now, the one thing about it, though, is it can still be destroyed and it can still be exiled as long as that is not through damage or targeting. And so even something as simple as a Day of Judgment can remove Progenitus. But anything like that or like Edict effects where it's the only viable target. So, a Sheoldred's Edict could take it out in theory. But that's what it takes. Anything short of that and you're pretty much golden. So right now, with everybody dealing with, the Izzet Prowess or the Jeskai Oculus decks, people aren't packing as many of those big unrestricted sweepers as they used to. Mm-hmm. And so you're in a really good spot, I think, to be sticking Progenitus on the board on like turn 5 or 6 and just kind of smiling all the way to the bank. Yeah, I love it.
And it's just been great, honestly. Like, the early game we kind of play with the lick, you ramp in, you run Overlord of the Hauntwoods, Llanowar Elves, all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. And you play in like Torch the Towers, like Scorching Fires. We still need to be cognizant of aggro decks that can still kill us. But sure. Turn 6, turn 4, turn 5, latest turn 6, you're cheating in Progenitus. Maybe you're getting in a Vaultborn Tyrant, gaining back some life you lost. And I will say I learned a valuable lesson against control. Fun fact about Progenitus that we've mentioned, Progenitus being an avatar means that the Cavern of Souls you run in the list, so you can play your Overlord of the Hauntwoods or Boiler Bilges, are also avatars, and Progenitus suddenly isn't counterable.
The notion that it shares a type, it shares a creature type with your setup cards is... What a time to be alive, man. Like, we live in a world where you're using Cavern of Souls to cast Progenitus. What?
Yep. Magic in 2025.
Yeah, this is nuts, and I'm here for it. That's honestly 10 out of 10 no notes. This looks fantastic. And so I mentioned the meta too and how well positioned this is. I find that in my experience too right now, a lot of the controlling decks and a lot of the decks that are trying to like survive the mid-range, they're worrying about the top tier meta decks right now, which are full of cheap cards. And so the sweeper that is seeing almost the most play, I think it is seeing the most play at the moment, which it has come and gone in popularity, is Temporary Lockdown. So Temporary Lockdown is the card. And I find it really funny too, because you can run 4 Temporary Lockdowns in the main right now, and no one's going to tell you that's a bad idea given what's going on in the meta. Well, maybe some people would, but I personally think it's fine. And in most like controlling decks, but like that doesn't touch this at all. And on top of that, it also doesn't touch Atraxa, Valgavoth, a lot of these other like big sexies that you could be sticking onto the battlefield. And in my experience, running reanimation strategies where I'm using Valgavoth's Faithful or Zombify to bring back Valgavoth, those decks slap right now. Game 2 and 3, it's a little tricky, but in general, that package is very powerful, and it can outgrind control while also having, if the cards break the way you need them to, having an explosive start that can stymie aggro as well. So, there's a little bit of variance involved with that style of deck, like there always is. Like your mill's got to hit right in order for it to work, but man, when they do, And the decks that are worried about the Cori-Steel Cutter, Izzet Prowess decks, don't have the tools to deal with those. They don't have the tools to deal with that. Because right now, the top of the meta, by a pretty fair margin, is Cori-Steel Cutter. If you're not familiar, this thing is from Tarkir Dragonstorm. It's what if Monastery Mentor was a tomb mana equipment. And it turns out it's way better than Monastery Mentor, at least in a standard environment. I know Cori-Steel Cutter is not restricted in Vintage, whereas Monastery Mentor is. So that's... context matters. But in general, this card is nuts. And it's absolutely crushing right now. And to the point where, looking at the most recent untapped stats, it looks like Izzet Prowess is making up, at least on ladder play over the last few weeks, it looks like it's making around 20% of the meta, which right when Dragonstorm dropped, it picked up to about 10 or 15 pretty quickly, and with recent tournament results and everything, it seems to have stabilized around 20% of play. So you got to be ready for it. You got to be able to deal with it.
100% you do. And I think, I'll be honest, like despite how strong Cori-Steel Cutter is, it's actually allowed for a lot of different aggro variants to arise, and especially different builds of the Izzet. Because like we've seen the Izzet aggro list with the Monastery Swift Spear, Slick Shot Show Off, Bolt Waves, Burst Lightning, very fast, very efficient. If they run out of steam, though, that's it, and it doesn't take much to do. You're either dead or not. But we even have seen like long-term gameplay using the token of Cori-Steel Cutter just to develop the board state, Tolarian Terror to cheat for like being a 1-mana 5/5 because of the instances and sorceries, and playing into a grindier matchup so that they can beat, as you mentioned, the temporary lockdown, because that is, frankly, the 3/4 on the list. It is everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's disgusting. And so in general, I think Cori-Steel is so it's so funny to have a deck this dominant that is like so consistent and generates the amount of power that it can put down on a board is insane. And you find yourself in a situation where if you're going up against somebody who has the right number of sleight of hands and ops and whatnot, alongside the Cori-Steel, if they find the Cori-Steel and the Storm Chaser's talent or whatever, there's really little you can do unless you hit the temporary lockdown on 3. You know, it's tough to deal with because they have so much stuff on the board. But honestly, I kind of love that it's here. Like you're saying, the tools that you need to stop the Cori-Steel Cutter decks are different for the most part than the tools that you need to stop the mice decks. You know, you can't just run a whole bunch of cut downs and Elspeth Smites against Cori-Steel Cutter and expect everything to be okay. You know, that's not going to get you there because it doesn't address the core problem. It might buy some time, but that's all it's going to do. And so all of a sudden, cards like Abrade, like I think the stock on that card jumped up significantly. And a card I mentioned earlier that I will not shut up about, and it's not going to happen anytime soon, is Haywire Might. Haywire Might in this matchup, it is phenomenal for a couple of reasons, because it has the ability to destroy, help if I spell that correctly, has the ability to destroy the Cori-Steel Cutter itself, as well as the Storm Chaser's talent, which are two incredibly powerful pieces of that engine. But it also, if you time it correctly, can deal with the temporary lockdown that's coming down to try to slow you down as well. So it lines up against the threats, and it lines up against the hate to those threats. So I'm a firm believer in this card. If you do run it, keep a green open kind of at all times, just in case the lockdown shows up. But I know and as a result, I'm running Insidious Roots, and temporary lockdown is a nightmare with Insidious Roots. But I've got 3 mites in the main and 1 in the board, and it's not that, you know, it's not that it doesn't get me sometimes. It's not that those decks don't still beat me sometimes, but I have play against them, and it feels pretty flexible and pretty good. So I think we've reached a point now where the meta has had to adjust to this Izzet Prowess list, and I'm really intrigued by what I'm seeing. I feel like we've seen a genuine shakeup in Standard, which I don't know about you, but I've been calling for that for weeks. So I'm here for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, our last big shape-up, I'll say, was Foundations. Like, not that Aether Drift was a bad set, but in terms of impactful cards, we didn't really see, like, a dominant archetype arise. I know there may be some arguments, well, Ketramos was a thing. There's that Orzhov Exile deck.
Sure.
Orzhov Exile list isn't dominating at Tier 1. I'm sorry. Ketramos, great card, but that's not a Tier 1 deck.
Yeah, I feel like that may have impacted other formats far more than Standard, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like Modern and stuff, and like like we've seen Lumbering World Wagon and some mid-range decks. They do some cool stuff. Great cards, but
like, mono green aggro with World Wagon feels really good. By the way, I know like the meta hasn't caught on, but I've played a handful of variants of that, and like it's kind of one note in the way that a lot of like classic aggro decks are, but man, that one note's real nice. So I don't know, World Wagon is a house, and I think a time will come when that steps up as a big contender, but we're not there yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, probably with another set or rotation, maybe it'll be there, but like nonetheless, still a great card. But yeah, Dragonstorm did a shakeup. We have seen a bunch of cards seeing play. Combos coming in, stabilizing with some new Tier 1 and a lot of Tier 2 decks too. And I think almost every top meta deck got something new, which I think is exciting.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, I mean, the Izzet Prowess deck wasn't really a thing, and now it is. The Oculus decks got some tools, like the Glacial Dragon Hunt is one that I know a lot of folks are running, which is pretty darn good. It's the the sorcery for 2. Yeah, draw a card. You may discard a card, and when you do, deals 3 damage to a target, and you can harmonize it out of the yard. So those Delirium decks that are trying to, put the Oculus online all of a sudden got a lot more consistent by adding, cards like this in the mix. And Tursa Light Shatter also is seeing a ton of play in that deck. And so as a result, the Oculus builds were nothing for a long time. I know a number of folks took them to a recent Pro Tour and got completely bodied, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Like, it just did not come together. And like, if I'm not mistaken, I think even like Jim Davis and John Finkel were on it, and it just didn't come together for them. Which, I mean, if folks of that caliber are playtesting and believing that to be the best deck in the in the format, or where they want to where they want to bet their their tournament on, I can't tell them they're wrong, even though it didn't turn out well. And so the fact that there are now these new tools, I'm not surprised to see that this deck is popular and people are still believing in it. And it does look good. Like, I've definitely played it a handful of times, and it does look pretty darn strong. So I get it. But yeah, that one also, according to Untapped, is the second most popular deck right now. And it's sitting at, around 10% of the meta, according to the arena play data, which part of that, whenever you're looking at arena play data, by the way, it's important to kind of take everything with a grain of salt, because arena play data and tournament data are vastly different, mostly because the structure is just so significantly different. If you're playing on the ladder, you are incentivized to win quickly in a way that you are not in a tournament. And so more, aggro decks tend to be kind of disproportionate on the arena ladder, even in best of 3. In best of 1, the difference is wild, but even in best of 3, you do see aggro being more heavily favored over control, even if they are of comparable power, generally speaking. But even so, I mean, like, right now, I think it's safe to say that aggro decks are definitely the best.
I certainly agree. Like, there's just, you're either dead or you're stabilized. There is no middle ground.
Yep. Yeah. So the other ones, so the top 3 decks right now, again, according to untapped.gg, Izzet Prowess, Jeskai Oculus, and then a deck that I'm surprised we're still talking about, or I'm surprised I'm about to bring up, Mono Black Midrange is apparently coming back. And that actually, that data matches my experience. I've been seeing a ton of it on the ladder all of a sudden. And, like, why? What changed?
Honestly, like, I'm kind of surprised too. I mean, I guess they're not really running Caustic Exhale. So, no. I mean, that's not something... Yeah,
the thing about the Mono Black Midrange deck is it is somewhat modular. There are some pieces that you can kind of modify and kind of, you can season to taste, as it were. You can run 4 Deep Cavern Bats. You have the Preacher of the Schism. You can run some number of those. A new card that they got in Dragonstorm that I think some folks are running is Carsey Revenant, which...
That's it.
Yeah, Carsey Revenant, I think, is a pretty significant piece, and also Speed Demon is another one that that those decks are playing. But I do want to talk about Carsey Revenant for a second, because I've been running this in a couple of decks, and holy cow, this card is the real deal. 3/3 for 3, Flying Death Touch Lifelink with Renew. You can pay 3 and exile it from your graveyard to put a Flying Death Touch and Lifelink counter on a creature you control. So I've been running this in Roots, and it's 3 mana Stabilize against aggro, and have a threat on the board, and when the opponent answers it, now my biggest plant all of a sudden becomes a Nighthawk. It's kind of nuts. Oh, and I get another Roots trigger on the way. Like, it's...
Because why not?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, yeah. Carsey Revenant feels like what they needed to do to make Vampire Nighthawk relevant again in the modern power level. And, yeah. This card slabs. So, Mono Black being able to toss this in the mix alongside, their Unholy Annexes, Archfiend of the Dross, that whole package, like, yeah. It seems pretty good.
I mean, the things that we can stick this on too, right? Because suddenly your Soulstone Sanctuary, you can make it a flying Soulstone Sanctuary with lifelink, throw this on a Preacher of the Schism. Like, there's so many great targets to just stick it on. Yeah. And that life gain stability is huge.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this card is great.
I mean, Shelter of the Apocalypse is great, but what if she flew and had lifelink? I mean,
there you go.
I think it's pretty decent. Yeah, pretty darn decent. So, yeah, and it's funny too because actually, in looking at a couple of these lists, it looks like Unstoppable Slasher actually has been more or less removed in favor of Carsey Revenant and Speed Demon, which I think is interesting. Yeah.
But I think that makes sense, right? Because if we think about it, like Unstable Slasher, it's a 2/3 Death Toucher. Okay, it blocks against one thing. You don't heal anything off it. Yeah, it comes back. It's stunned for 2 turns, though. With the Carsey Revenant, I block something. I more than likely kill something because of Death Touch. I get to heal 3. And then suddenly I can bring, some other creature I've got on the board back with lifelink and stabilize more.
Yeah, like I'm inclined to. Yeah, the Unstoppable Slasher, I think a lot of people think, oh, but it comes back. That's great, right? In my experience, it coming back with the stun counters on it is almost irrelevant. Because you have to wait so many turns before it untaps, and if your opponent answers it at any time in there, it's gone. The other thing about it is it would be a non-bow with the Carsey Revenant because of the way that Unstoppable Slasher is worded. It also is a non-bow with map tokens, and if the control deck is running Get Lost, there's a good chance you'll be sitting with map tokens lying around, and that's the thing. So the reason that I'm calling that out is because Unstoppable Slasher has some text on it, right? So whenever it dies, if it had no counters on it, you return it to the battlefield tapped with 2 stun counters. Obviously, that's meant to reference the stun counters that it has, and obviously it's meant to interact with those, but it interacts with any counter. And so all of a sudden, if you have a map token down, you have the Unstoppable Slasher Explore, you hit a non-land, it now has a counter on it. And if your opponent hits it with any removal, it's now gone forever. So that mode is offline the moment any counter goes on it. And the Carsey Revenant is putting keyword counters on stuff. So it's a little awkward. You end up in a scenario where you can't really get full value out of these cards when they're together. And and so I can see the tension there. Unstoppable Slasher also, like, it hits really stinking hard, and it's phenomenal, obviously, when you have the Bloodletter of Akazats, because they create that, like, one-hit combo. But the chances of that actually connecting nowadays is very, very, very low. And I think people recognize that. And honestly, independent of that combo, both of those cards are pretty lackluster. Neither of them are going to be that awesome in a world where the best deck in the format is literally creating tokens by playing 2 opts, and could do that at instant speed. So it's, I can understand why they've pivoted away from that package, and you don't see that as often these days. It's a cute trick, but it's very, very easy to disrupt. Meanwhile,
like you said, it's easy to disrupt in this meta. There's so many ways for tokens, so many ways things get answered. Like it doesn't hit as well. But
But the other one that I want to touch on is Speed Demon.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say big hitters
in the mix.
Is one.
So yeah, the Speed Demon is a 5/5 for 5 with flying and trample and start your engines. The exclamation point. Start your engines! At the beginning of your end step, you draw X cards, lose X life, where X is your speed. So this is one of the only speed cards where the actual number is relevant. There's this and Momentum Breaker are like the only 2, I think, where pretty much everything else, it's either, you're at max or not. And that's it. It's kind of binary in that regard. But in this case, it's not, which is pretty cool. But to the point where you almost don't want max speed a lot of the time, because if you have max speed, you're losing 4 life every turn and drawing 4 cards, which, granted, if you have a Shelter of the Apocalypse down, okay. Like, that's fine. Assuming you're not at exactly 4, because then you'll be dead before the life gain triggers. But, aside from that, but in general, like, the amount of card draw you could get off this thing, I always felt like this card was really, really good, and it hasn't seen a lot of play since it's come out, but now all of a sudden we find it here in the 3rd most popular deck in the meta, as, a 2 or 3 of, depending on the list. How do you feel about that? Like, what are we thinking here?
I'm sure going to love using Carsey Revenant to renew one of the Speed Demons, so I'm gaining 6 life every turn, and then drawing 4 cards so I have more answers up. I'm okay with that. I think it's great though. Like we said, like there, Aether Drift didn't exactly have like a huge impact on the meta. It had several select cards, but the fact we're actually seeing more resurgent of those cards now, I think is great. And this is a great late. The fact I'm calling turn 5 a late game at this point. The fact we have a turn 5 play that's generating value that lets a mid-range deck, if it lives through the aggro, is going to stabilize well, but also keep up in card advantage with the control deck, puts it in a really nice spot.
Heck yeah.
I think it's great to see this.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's just, it's freaking wild, man. The other thing I find fascinating, too, in looking at the meta breakdown is, these decks are fairly aggressive, but a little on the mid-range side. Fourth on the list, we have Jeskai Control. And then, like, if you were to ask me a week ago, what are the best decks in the format? I would say Red Mice of some flavor, Domain, and like Esper Pixie. And all three of those decks, I mean, looking at the play rate, the popularity, like mono red aggro is like, what, 7th on the list, with Dimir midrange being kind of, Pixie adjacent, and that's, 6th. Like Esper self-bounce, as it's called, and Orzhov Pixie are like barely on the chart. They're near the bottom, making up just a couple percentage. Esper self-bounce, as it's called here on Untapped, is 3% of the meta. So between this and Orzhov Pixie, we're looking at less than 6%-ish of the meta. That's wild to me.
I'm okay with that.
Same. The Pixie decks are incredibly tedious to battle, so I am not mad at those being less popular in general. But I'm curious, like, what do you think? What do you think accounts for that? Because I've played the Pixie deck a handful of times, and it felt insane. Like, the Esper deck feels phenomenal. Yeah, why the drop off?
I think part of that's just with the shifting of the meta, right? Like, with the Pixie deck, it leads to a grind your game. And I will say I'm happy that it's lower, but at the same time, like, in terms of play pattern, the Pixie deck actually has a really good game up against the Izzet Prowess and Cori-Steel Cutter decks. Because you're just Hopeless Nightmaring their hand, you're forcing the sacrifice on the breaker, you're going to do it again and bounce things. They even run temporary lockdown that nukes out the Cori-Steel Cutter. They do their loops. It's a great deck to play, but at this point in the meta, it's really only able to target Cori-Steel Cutter. Because, like, we've seen Control come back. Control has a really great game up against Pixie between the card advantage that they can generate past turn 3, the instant speed removal of Elspeth Smite with attacking, Ride's End, being able to exile, even with Jeskai, where the torch the towers, hitting that pivotal 2 power point. So there's a lot of decks that just hit against it while it's only hitting the 1. But
absolutely,
I still love the fact we have I'm gonna say we actually have 2 control decks on the top, because I'm not sure, it's a little bit further on the list, but the Omniscience combo deck is a little bit control.
You think?
Well, it is a combo deck for sure, but it has control elements.
I mean, okay, I would call that a combo deck. That's the other crazy thing. We have competitive decks that are aggro, like Spellslinger, combo, mid-range, and control. Like, the introduction of Cori-Steel Cutter seems to have opened up and made the most diverse standard we've had in a very long time. Hugely, is that fair to say?
I think it is. By no disagreement. Like, you heard me like 3 weeks ago, and we both said, hey, Standard's healthy. We've got so many decks. And I'm like, wouldn't it be great if we just had like a few more? And suddenly now we've got like...
Now we do. Yeah.
Yeah, like tier 1 has like 4 or 5 decks sitting in it, but tier 2 has like 10 to 15 different archetypes hitting in, and all of them do something so different that has such different games against every other deck. And like the reason I was kind of mentioning Omniscience, the Omniscience combo deck, well, okay, yeah, it is a combo deck, but with the Jeskai control deck, right?
Yeah. One
of the cards that really helps them is the Meringue River region.
Yes. This card.
Yeah, that's a great card.
So good. So good. Yeah, I only own one of these in paper, and I think I need to change that because, yeah, Meringue River region it is the finisher that the control deck needs. And it's so good. Yeah, I've definitely seen it a couple of times. The one thing that I've noticed, though, about this card, you can tell a lot about a player by how they play it. Because I know a lot of dyed-in-the-wool kind of Teferi, Hero of Dominaria control lovers just don't want to cast a 6-mana creature. I've gone up against these folks a lot where it's like, man, that 2 river regions ago, if they had just put that down as a critter, I would have lost that game, but they just didn't, and they just kept drawing cards. Like, don't get me wrong, drawing cards is awesome. I get it. But the thing about this card that I think is so valuable and so powerful is the fact that it provides the tempo swing and puts 6 power in the air. Like, it immediately turns the corner, like in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And it's not dead in your hand prior to that moment, prior to when the time is right. So I think the best control players right now are going to see the opportunities. I think they're going to see the most success if they're willing to turn that corner quickly. I think that's the move. We actually recently, a couple weeks back, as of this recording, there was our friend and teammate Jaffer hosted a tournament, a standard tournament that we got to do coverage for. And I Scoop actually made it to the finals. So spoiler warning for that, I suppose, with a Dimir control deck that was running Marrying River Regent and the Oil Deep Gearhulk. And I gotta say, it was definitely a control deck. Like, there was no, like, that was not a mid-range list. Like, turn 2, turn 3, and oftentimes turn 4, they were in one way or another disrupting the opponent's game plan. But Marrying River Regent was oftentimes the turn 6 tap out slam, bounce both threats, and all of a sudden I'm the beatdown. And, you know, and just establishing themselves as the beatdown player saw a lot of success. It worked really well. You know, and Oil Deep Gearhulk was the other one because when it enters, you know, it's a life linker that is very, very powerful against aggro, you know, because it has the ward, so it's difficult to deal with, and it's, you know, a 4/4 for 4. But you also get to check your opponent's hand, and you may choose to disrupt it if you see a card that you're concerned about. But if you don't, you could just not. You could just let them have a crappy hand and sit on it. That's fine, too. It was really fun to watch, and I want to call that out. Not that Dimir control is necessarily a big contender in the current meta, but, you know, we watched it in a tournament, rack up some wins and look really good. And I think the big kind of takeaway that I felt coming out of that, having watched it, is control works best when, instead of trying to get to turn 9, 10, 12 to turn the corner and close the game, if you start turning the corner at turn 6, you know, or
Honestly, yeah.
or you know, that's where it really looks good. And so I think, you know, modern day control mages, the game has sped up, and that includes your finishers, you know, and if you behave that way and if you kind of build your decks that way, you're going to see some success, man, because you got some killer tools right now. And yeah, Marrying River Regent, I'm not surprised to see that it's a key piece of a lot of those decks because, man, that thing's good. Yeah, I like it a lot.
It's so good. Like, I would compare this thing to like Hullbreaker Horror. Hullbreacher Horror. Like the old crab from our industry.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you flash
The
that
lobster.
in 7/8, bounce everything. Yeah, like, but this is immediate. Like, I would love if this thing had flash. I think it actually, not that it isn't great on its own. I think maybe it'd be too pushed if it had flash. Nonetheless, wish it had flash. But
If it had flash, I think it'd have to enter tapped, but still, like, yeah, that'd still be real good.
that's stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's still
anyway.
fine.
Yep.
But, you know, you cheat this in 6 mana, 6/7 flyer, bounce 2 things, you toss up your opponent, they've got to answer a flyer. The game's over in 3 to 4 turns. More than likely 2 or 3 because of the life totals by that point. And to what you said, the game has sped up. If you drop this on turn 6, you were saying to your opponent, all right, clock's on, what do you got? Because they need to answer this or they're just dead.
Well, and as somebody who's played plenty of aggro, and I know you're with me on that, there's something about being the beatdown and doing the combat math to try to figure out, okay, how can I whittle down those last 6 life points? Okay, cool. On my next attack, I'll be able to do this, and this. And then all of a sudden, it's like, no, you can't. You can't do none of those things. It becomes a situation of, do you have burn or a kill spell all of a sudden? Like, you know, that can be really disorienting if you're not ready for it. And, you know, you got to have a game plan for that. You just do. And I think River Regent is just, the Marrying River Regent specifically, is because there are a lot of regions in this set. That's the other thing I find funny. Tarkir had a lot of cycles. And so if you say the Regent, like, do you mean the Marrying River Regent or like the Scavenger Regent? Or I think there are 2 or 3 others that don't see a significant amount of play. But in any event,
There are,
Scavenger
so
Regent
fun fact,
Yeah.
Yeah, there are 4 regions, but there is no red one.
Really?
Yep.
That's curious.
Yeah.
Now
I'm
I'm
trying to
curious.
think if I don't think white has a region either. I think it's only I think it's the Sultai Scavenger and the Bloom Vine. I think it's just those 3.
Oh, it is those 3. You're right. Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we have the Marrying River region, the Scavenger region in black, and then the Bloomvine region in green. All phenomenal cards, by the way, in their own right, in their own decks. They're very good. Yeah, big fan. Can't go wrong with any of these. But yeah, so there is a Jeskai control list right now that is apparently the 4th most popular deck in the meta. Controls back, baby, and no surprise, the Marrying River region is a piece of it. The other card that I would love to get your thoughts on, that some variants of these decks are running like 2 of, that I have feelings on, and I want to get yours. Jeskai Revelation. It's an instant for 7. Return a spell or permanent to its owner's hand. Deals 4 damage to any target. Create 2 1/1 Prowess monks. Draw 2 cards. Gain 4 life.
I'm fine with this being like a one of.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a fine, one of in a deck as a 7 mana finisher. Refill your hand a bit, a little bit of a board state.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're doing better, but that said, I mean the Omniscience combo deck plays this as their finisher, so
Yep. Well, the Omniscience combo deck runs this alongside the Invasion of Arcavios, because this returns the Invasion of Arcavios to your hand. Then you play the Invasion of Arcavios, and this goes, and it pulls this back from the graveyard. Rinse, repeat with 4 damage for each loop. Honestly, actually, I love. In the context of the Omniscience combo deck, I love that we got Jeskai Revelation, because it speeds that deck up and makes it far simpler.
so much faster. Yeah, it does.
So much faster than what it already was. Like, it was already, you get the Omniscience out on turn 4. If you have the Invasion of Arcavios, you win the game, but it required like 6 or 7 more steps. So I don't know about you, but I know I always had to, like, I would always wait and let my opponent like demonstrate that they knew how to do it, because there was whiff potential there. But now it's just Invasion of Arcavios. I'm going to pull the Jeskai Revelation from the sideboard, and you're welcome to leave, because we both know what happens next. I kind of like that. It's very straightforward, very simple, very clean. It's like you got it or you don't, and we're going to be done here. And I like that. But I've also seen control decks on the ladder that just run 4 Jeskai Revelation as their finisher. And I don't know if you guys know this, but when you 4 damage times 4, 4, 8, 16. Yeah, that's not 20.
Yeah.
So, if you're using Jeskai Revelation purely as your finisher, you're going to be disappointed, in my experience. Like, you need some kind of backup. Now, this as a 1 or 2 of like top end way to like really make sure the door is shut and you close. Cool. Like, I can appreciate that. I think it's fine. It's fine for that. But like, this as a value piece in a deck that is like ramping like crazy or controlling like crazy can be very, very strong. Don't count on this being your only threat, though. That's my biggest word of warning, word of advice. Yeah. What else? Oh, that said, I'm also just not a big fan of this design. Personally, I find it uninspiring, because it's just big value. That's it. It's like it's a Jeskai Timmy card, which is fine, but like it's not doing anything we haven't seen before. It's just doing a lot of things we've seen before. So
yeah, it's doing what Jeskai does, and that's what it does.
It's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just like, eh. But I also have no desire to like build around it. Like that's the thing. As a jank brewer, I'm trying to find the build around hooks on this thing, and they're not there. This is they're really not. I guess it's it's one of those things where like I guess in older formats you could run it alongside Torrential Gear Hulk, but you already had Magma, Opus, and Sublime Epiphany, so like why would you do this?
And those just feel better. Like I'm in the same boat. This feels like a solid 1 to 2 of in a deck. It does a thing. It restocks a little bit. It establishes a board state. It's not a 4 of finisher. It's not a Meringue River region. Yeah. But with the Jeskai decks, though, there are like what is interesting about them. Maybe you've seen this too, but some of the Jeskai lists have shifted away from stock up. they are running the enchantment from Dragonstorm instead.
Really?
Yeah.
The blue, what is it? The Roiling Dragonstorm? Is that the one?
No, not the Roiling Dragonstorm. It's a 3-mana Jeskai enchantment. It's 1 white, 1 blue, 1 red.
Oh,
But it's the Saga.
yes. The one about the way, which I want to use as a fastball song cue every time. Okay, I know the one you're talking about. Was it Discover the Way or something of that nature? Rediscover the Way. There it is.
Rediscover. Yeah, that's
Found it. Bam. Rediscover the Way. Saga for 3. Chapter 1, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom. And that's also Chapter 2. So both chapters, you're doing that. And then Chapter 3, whenever you cast a non-creature spell this turn, target creature you control gains double strike till end of turn. So that third chapter is really excellent if you have prowess, but is irrelevant otherwise. But from a pure kind of dollars and cents, number perspective, I can appreciate those first 2 chapters being, similar to Stock Up, but you go deeper. Because with Stock Up, you look at the top 5 cards and grab 2 of them. Already fantastic. That's the best divination they've ever made. Fight me. Like, it's so freaking good. But Rediscover the Way, you are looking at 6 cards split between 2 turns. And so you are actually digging deeper into your deck and actually looking at more cards. At the end of the day, you net the same number. That's interesting. I definitely don't hate it. If you're in these colors already, this is potentially a slight upgrade, especially because your opponent doesn't want to spend removal on this. The last thing I want to do is spend something like a Get Lost to get rid of what is your half of your card draw spell. That's, I think that's not a good rate. Yeah. I'm not loving that.
No, it's not. And the one thing I've actually enjoyed why this is being included though, right? Because we're running Shiko in this list.
Yeah.
So Shiko can bring back Stock Up for sure, but Shiko can also bring back Rediscover the Way. But giving Shiko double strike, bringing back it, giving it double strike again. Meringue River Region having double strike. I think that the enchantment gives a really nice closure. For a way for Jeskai to close out the game faster in a really efficient manner. Because now Shiko resolves, they are going to start getting card advantage. Now you got to answer a dragon. Consider that they're getting more cards in the enchantment, and if they get down a creature between the first and second chapter resolution before the third, if that creature's big enough, it's getting double strike, and you're probably just out of the game, right?
Yeah. I'm here for it, man. I think this whole setup is excellent. Also, Shiko Paragon of the Way.
Just great.
Dude. So good. But again, to kind of what we were discussing, it's a 5-mana creature at sorcery speed. In a traditional control deck, that would be a lousy rate, except it allows you to recast a spell from your yard, which could just be a card draw spell, but it could also be that Get Lost that you used previously, or, some other kill spell or a bounce spell. You can use it to re-up on removal. So you get a scenario where it's another creature that drops that impacts the board immediately. So all of a sudden, this Jeskai deck, I think, is like genuine tap-out control more often than not. And looking at a number of the lists, that kind of tracks. Like, they are running some number of counter spells. Specifically, you see 1, maybe 2, 3 steps ahead. And Dispelling Exhale is one that you see a lot, which I find that name a little bit redundant, because aren't all exhales dispelling, carbon dioxide or whatever? Or in this case, liquid magic. I don't know. But regardless, Dispelling Exhale, it's a really good 2-drop counter spell that works best if you have a dragon, it's counter unless they pay 4. That's basically, at most points in the early and mid game, that's a hard counter spell. Like, it just is. It'll stop whatever you're trying to hit. But that's kind of it. You're not seeing the 4 of 3 steps ahead anymore, and you're not seeing occasionally you can run things like negate and what on the board, but you don't necessarily have to. This is really the only main deck counter spell, or it's one of the major ones. And I don't know, that's interesting to me. This notion that control is pivoting to tap out. And I think that shift in philosophy has brought so much success. And to the point where we're talking about control as a meta contender in 2025. So,
which is great.
Yeah, I love it.
we're living in a thriving meta, and I'm excited. Like, I think it's just going to get better as the few more weeks go on.
Hmm.
We've not even reached the pinnacle of
Yeah.
what can be found in this meta with all the cards we have.
Well, and okay, I'm gonna share some first world content creator problems with this. Is I actually slapped together a control deck featuring Shiko as well as a card that I've been meaning to build for a while now, Dragonologist, which was actually my preview card.
Ooh.
Which so I'm a big fan of it, and I wanted to build a control deck featuring Dragonologist because like let's see, does this deck or does this card have play? Because I definitely said to a lot of people that it did. So like, am I right? And I built a Jeskai deck that looks very similar to that meta deck before it broke. But it's been a week and a half, 2 weeks at this point since I built that deck, and I haven't recorded the video for it yet. Now it looks like I just took the meta deck and tweaked and now it's like a slightly suboptimal meta deck. It was like, no, I did genuinely create this. It's just like the good cards are the good cards, and I use them, and like they also fit them, the meta build, quite comfortably. So, that video might not, when I do finally get around to filming it, that might look a little out of date, but here we are. But that said, Shiko and Meringue River region are key elements of, the deck that I put together as well. I'm also running Zurgo and Ojutai though in that deck, and I think
I think too.
Yeah, it's really freaking good. Zurgo and Ojutai, for the folks who remember March of the Machine, it was a really good finisher at one point that I think is, it has the potential to be even better now that we have other dragons to support it. So it's a 4/4 for 5 with flying and haste. It has hexproof as long as it enters the battlefield this turn. And whenever one or more dragons you control hit a player or battle, you look at the top 3 cards, put one of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom. And you may return one of those dragons to its owner's hand. This allows you to reset Shiko, which I think is pretty darn fun, if I may say. So you can do some cool things with that. It also can simply bounce itself so that it's basically never in danger of targeted removal, which is the way a lot of folks play it, and that's great. I will gladly spend 5 mana every single turn to make sure that my main threat and card draw engine never dies. So, and again, tap out control. When you're controlling the board, you can afford to tap out and get in for your licks when the coast is clear and you have a good shot. And this then frees up. It draws you more cards. The amount of cards that you see these days is just silly.
Oh, it's just so disgusting.
Just so many cards.
Although, with all the decks we're seeing in Standard right now, the evolution of the control deck, and I like Domain is still around there with the Overlords and everything. There is one card I am so happy we just don't see anymore.
What's that?
I am so happy Sunfall isn't being played, and if it is, it's maybe a 1 or 2 of.
Yes,
I'm so happy.
That is so true. Because the notion of like passing to your opponent with the understanding that, well, now is the turn that they Sunfall. That was a thing that all of us were doing just for the longest time. There was an expectation like, well, they're going to be able to hit their 5th land. They have 2 planes over there. They probably have Sunfall. Which, don't get me wrong, the one time when they don't have it feels great, and that relief is palpable, and there's something to be said for that. But yes, I appreciate the fact that Sunfall has become downright rare. Yeah, and agreed, dude. Also, thank you for pointing that out so we can just savor that for a second.
It's just, it hit me like earlier this week, and like late last week, I was like, I see Dodge, I see Temporary Lockdown, I see Smite, I see Get Lost. You know what I haven't seen in my big stuff sitting around? No Sunfall. And it makes my heart so happy. Less exile effects. Please.
Yes. 10 out of 10, no notes. And I also love it because Day of Judgment is around. And I've seen a lot of control players pivoting into Day of Judgment as the sweeper spot to save on 1 mana. Because when you're blowing out a bunch of tokens or a bunch of pixies, that 1 turn makes a huge difference. But when they're going up against me and I'm reanimating Atraxa and Valgavoth, you're just resetting me. Thanks. Like, oh no, I have to draw another 5 cards off my Atraxa. Whatever will I do?
Oh no.
Oh, what am I going to do?
Value.
Yeah. It's great. I love it. So all of a sudden the fact that it's the best in class removal is now kind of shifting back to destroy effects. A+, no notes. Love it.
chef's kiss. Like this is the standard that dreams are made of.
You know, you're not wrong. It really, and it's so funny too, because I've gotten so comfortable about just complaining about standard because it's been so tedious and frustrating that it's kind of weird to be like, is this fun? Am I having fun?
Yeah.
Playing Magic? No way.
It's bright. My cards are resolving. I'm
Right?
alive. I'm thriving.
Yeah,
I can play like 5 different archetypes.
Wait, yeah, untap, upkeep. Wait, that I cast that creature last turn. It's still here? What?
Still here.
How does this? That doesn't happen. Opponent, you feeling okay? Oh, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
in all honesty, like this meta is just everything. Like you have games that can end on turn 3, games that can go to turn 8 and past. You've got the fast-paced aggro. We've got the control thriving in, the mid-range bringing the balance. We've got the combo decks happening, and even just the big dumb ramp stuff that hits in too. Like this is just, it's beautiful. It's
It's
really
all here.
beautiful.
Oh. Yeah, for sure, man. This is so positive. Also, okay, my other takeaway is you and I just need to chat more because
Yeah, that's true too.
I always feel better when we talk. So it's like, oh, we should maybe make more time for that. But anyway, I'm really grateful for the podcast because it gives us an excuse to do just that. So rock on. And so I'm looking at the time, and we've been at this for coming up on an hour, and also the last few episodes have actually been like relatively like close to an hour, and it's been relatively tight. I think we should probably keep doing that because I think that's better for algorithms and things. Anyway.
Yeah, consistency. I hear that's a good thing, or so I'm told. Like a turn 4. Oh, I guess that's another lasting note. This is also
please.
a meta where we can play a turn 4 Crater Hoof, apparently.
People are out there doing it, and I gotta be honest, there have been a couple of times in Best of One where I've seen like the turn 1 Llanowar Elf into the turn 2 Archdruid, and it's just like, and I'm looking at my hand with no 1-mana removal in it, and it's like, oh, is it happening? Like, and when you get hit by a turn 4 Craterhoof in Standard, I don't know about you, but I just can't be mad. It's like, all right, fair. Like,
I'm not mad. You know what? It's my only complaint about that deck is I do wish we had like Elvish Mystic or like just another 1-mana dork that was better than the Rootland Cultivator. But nonetheless, this is a more to the point. This is a meta where you can play a Craterhoof Behemoth, and we have a Nykthos for creatures, and it feels so underutilized.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah, I played a combo deck a couple weeks ago that was using that was actually submitted by Hearsay, actually, friend of the channel, and it was using 3-Tree City and Deep Root. What was it? The Deep Root Pilgrimage, and it was all Merfolk. It was
yes.
It was one of those things where like I played it for like 3 games, and I violently like infinite popped on turn 3 in like 2 of those 3 games. I was like, what is happening? Like, how are we doing this? Yeah, it involved there's a Merfolk, there's a tap on tap Merfolk from Murders at Karlov Manor. It was get that on under a cauldron. Under an Exit Soul Cauldron, and with like the Velocipede, so that everything's entering with counters.
Oh, yeah.
It was like the most convoluted Rube Goldberg machine, but it actually popped a couple of times and felt phenomenal. So I'm gonna have to revisit that with proper shout outs, because Deep Root Pilgrimage is another card that is like, and that's actually another deck that I've seen people play. Like talk about like kind of a tier 3 dark horse deck that's running around out there. Freaking Merfolk. Like, Simic Merfolk is not crazy right now in Standard. Like, I think a lot of people will tell you it is, but no, for real. It actually looks pretty good. The opportunity to run flash creatures and have counter spells backing up your threats, like Tempo right now has the potential to be real, I think. Mm-hmm. And a lot of cards that you don't think of as Merfolk are, in fact, Merfolk. Like, there are a lot of incidentally good Merfolk in the format, so... I don't know.
Turns out Ixalan had some really good Merfolk.
They sure did. Yeah. Well, and Aether Drift gave us... Yeah, and Aether Drift gave us one that is, like, better than it has any right to be in that one drop, whose name is escaping me. But there's a one drop Merfolk from Aether Drift that kind of ties the room together. Names... I'm sorry. But
I'm trying to think. I think I know which one you're talking about, but again, Aether Drift. I remember selecting cards.
That was 80 years ago, right?
Yeah.
All right. This is gonna bug the crap out of me. I need to find it. A Mind Spring Merfolk. That's the one. This guy.
Oh,
Mind Spring
where it's
Merfolk.
exhaust.
Yeah, 1/1 with exhaust. X blue. Draw X cards. Put X counters on each Merfolk you control. So it's a quasi Merfolk lord that draws you cards and is a 1-drop. You know. And a good playable Merfolk was something, or a good playable 1-drop was something the Merfolk deck was missing. So that's one I'll probably tinker with that some more because I think there might be something there, and I think it'll be really fun to play. So yeah. But in any event, I digress slightly. I was bringing it in for a landing and then got distracted by a shiny thing. But we're at a standard where there are shiny things to be distracted by. Oh, I love it. Anyway,
That's the best. That's what we need. That's what we want. Give us more.
Oh, wonderful. Awesome, man. Well, was there anything that you wanted to let the folks know before we bring this in for a landing? Anything you got coming up?
Nothing coming up per se. I got some cool stuff coming out, new combos, new decks always coming out on the YouTube. I got some new short form content popping out next week. I'll be doing starting up Burns Money is making a comeback finally starting next week. So
Let's go.
He's got a fun series of pitch this to pitch synergies and combos for weird ideas in Standard and Commander, and then maybe some motivational stuff on the side. I don't know. I gotta talk to him. He's sometimes hard to find.
That's amazing. I love it. By the way, for anybody who's not familiar, Burns Money is actually one half of an unfortunately defunct podcast. That's actually where Piggy Banks started, the character that I've been using for my shorts. And so that character would actually not exist today if it wasn't for Astrals and I doing a collaboration and trying to come up with a fun gimmick and landing on the landlords. So I'm excited to see Burns Money back in the saddle and out here selling cowboy. It's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. Ben's Money is going to have some sweet pitches for you just on where you go. He's the CEO of Value and Synergy.
Fantastic. You love to hear it. You love to hear it. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you, dear listener, dear viewer. We're both streamers. We're on Twitch doing the things. Links in the description. Please click the things. Also, other members of the team who appear on this show regularly, they're all linked down there. They're all fantastic people. I highly recommend dropping follows in all the places. Like, subscribe if you're here on the YouTube. 5-star in all the podcast things. I'm a content creator. I got to do the call to action. It is what it is. Thank you for tolerating. We appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one, everybody. Later. If you're looking for an alternative marketplace online for Magic the Gathering singles and sealed products, I have great news for you. MagicJank.com is an online marketplace for people who love all Magic the Gathering has to offer, even the jankier bits. Join the MagicJank marketplace with your own storefront. Whether you're a small business or a hobbyist with more bulk lying around than you'd like, MagicJank.com can help your products reach new customers who love the game as much as you do.